The elevator doors were already closing when the girl slipped her hand between them. She was small, maybe 6, maybe 7, with 2 braids that had come half undone and a yellow cardigan that was a size too big, the sleeves falling past her wrists. She didn't look up at the man already standing inside. She just pressed herself against the back wall and stared at the floor numbers as they lit up one by one. Elliot Bancroft barely noticed her. He was thinking about the press conference. About the press conference. About the statement his communications director had drafted, and the 3 words he'd asked her to change, and the 2 words she'd change back without telling him. He was thinking about the 14 reporters who had shown up this morning, and the one who had asked the question he hadn't been prepared for. He was 58 years old and had run Bancroft Medical Supply for 22 years, had testified before Senate subcommittees and shaken hands with 3 presidents. And still a single unexpected question from a woman with a recorder could make his palms go cold. The elevator stopped at the 4th floor. Nobody got on. It started moving again. The girl made a sound. Not quite a word, more like she'd started to say something and thought better of it. Elliot glanced at her. She was looking at him now. Not the way children usually looked at adults, that unfocused half-attention. She was looking at him the way his late wife used to look at him when she knew something he didn't. "Are you going to the parking garage?" she asked. Her voice was steady, quieter than he expected. "I am," he said. She pressed her lips together, looked at the floor, then back at him. "I saw something," she said. "Under your car." He almost smiled. The way you almost smile when a child says something that sounds like something an adult would say. "Under my car," he repeated. "The black one, with the silver stripe on the side. Level B2, near the pillar." He stopped, almost smiling. His car was black. There was a silver accent along the lower panel. His daughter had called it flashy when he bought it, and he had told her it was tasteful, and she had laughed at him. It was parked on B2. He always parked near the pillar because the space was slightly wider, and he was particular about his doors. "What did you see?" he asked. She hesitated. Not because she didn't know. He could tell she knew. She was hesitating because she was deciding whether to trust him with it. "A man," she said. "He was lying on the ground under your car. He had a tool, like a wrench, but smaller. And he had a bag. A black bag, the kind that zips on 3 sides. He put something up under there, and then he got back up and walked toward the stairwell." She paused. He looked around first, before he got up, to see if anyone was watching. "But you were watching." "I was waiting for my grandpa. He parks on B2 too. I got out of the elevator before him, and I saw the man before I knew I was seeing him." If that makes sense. It made sense. The kind of detail you only get from someone telling the truth. That odd, specific honesty of "I saw it before I understood what I was seeing." The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. Elliot did not step out. He pressed the button to hold the doors. "How long ago was this? Maybe 20 minutes. Maybe a little more." Grandpa had to talk to someone at the front desk. 20 minutes. The press conference had ended 35 minutes ago. He had shaken hands, answered 2 more questions in the hallway, stopped to speak with his attorney, gone up to retrieve his briefcase from the 6th-floor conference room. 20 minutes was precise. 20 minutes meant whoever it was had known his schedule closely enough to know when he would be occupied. "Did you tell anyone?" he asked. "I told the man at the parking attendant booth," he said. She stopped. Something moved across her face. "He said kids aren't supposed to be in the garage without an adult and asked where my grandpa was." Elliot looked at her for a moment. Then he took out his phone. He called his head of security, a former Chicago PD detective named Roy Stamper, who had been with the company for 11 years and who answered on the 2nd ring no matter what time it was. "I need you to call the police and have them send someone to the parking structure attached to the Meridian Tower on West Kinsey," Elliot said. "Level B2, my vehicle. Tell them not to touch it and not to let anyone near it until they've swept underneath." He paused. "And tell them a child reported it. They should know it came from a child who was paying attention." He ended the call. The girl was watching him. "What's your name?" "Ren," she said. "Ren Okafor." "Ren," he nodded slowly. "My name is Elliot Bancroft. I want you to know that I'm taking what you told me very seriously. Can you take me to your grandfather? I'd like to wait with you both until the police arrive." She looked at him for a moment longer. Then she reached out and pressed the button for the lobby herself. "He's at the coffee cart," she said. "He always gets a coffee when we come downtown. He says it's the only good thing about the city." "He's not wrong," Elliot said. The doors opened. They walked out together. Her grandfather's name was Joseph Okafor. He was 69, with close cropped, white hair and the careful posture of a man who had spent decades standing in front of people. He had taught high school history for 31 years in the Chicago public school system, and he had the kind of stillness that comes from a lifetime of making rooms pay attention. He was standing at the coffee cart with a cup in both hands when Wren came around the corner with a stranger in a suit, and he went very still in a different way. "Grandpa," Wren said, "this is Mr. Bancroft. I told him about the man under his car." Joseph set one of the cups down on the cart counter. He looked at Elliot with the calm, measuring look of someone who has spent 31 years deciding in 3 seconds we're taking this seriously, Joseph said, requires alarm. It wasn't a question. "I've called the police," Elliot said. "They should be here shortly. I'd like to ask Wren some more questions, if that's all right with you. Not to put her on the spot. Just, she remembers things clearly. I think that's going to matter." Joseph looked at his granddaughter. She gave him a small nod that seemed to carry more information than it should have, the private shorthand of two people who understood each other well. "We'll stay," Joseph said. They sat on a bench near the building's main entrance. Elliot's attorney, a sharp, efficient woman named Carol Marsh, who had already heard from Roy and come back downstairs, stood a few feet away making calls, her voice low and rapid. 2 of the building's security personnel had gone down to B2 to make sure no one accessed the vehicle. "Tell me more about the man you saw," Elliot said to Wren. "Anything you remember. It doesn't have to be in order." Wren thought for a moment. She did this the way serious children do, without performing the thinking, just actually doing it. "He was tall," she said, "taller than you, not as wide. He had on dark pants and a gray jacket. Like a work jacket, not a suit jacket. There was writing on the back, but I couldn't read it. It was too far and I didn't have my glasses." She frowned slightly at this, like it was a personal failing. His hair was brown. He had a beard that wasn't quite a real beard, more like he hadn't shaved in a while. And he had a tattoo on his right hand, between his thumb and his first finger. It looked like an anchor. Elliot was quiet. An anchor tattoo. Right hand, the webbing between thumb and forefinger. He knew exactly one person who had a tattoo fitting that description, and the knowledge of it settled into his chest like something cold and very heavy. "Did he look at you?" Elliot asked. His voice stayed even. He made sure of that. "No," Wren said. "I was standing behind the pillar. I don't think he saw me." "Good." He said it quietly, and meant it in a way he couldn't fully explain to a 7-year-old. The police arrived in 11 minutes. 2 officers first then, when the situation became clearer, a bomb disposal unit. The Meridian Towers parking structure was evacuated. West Kinsey was temporarily closed in both directions. The story would be on the local news by 5 o'clock and on 3 national networks by 7. Elliot stood outside with Joseph and Wren and watched the controlled chaos with the particular calm of a man who has reached the far side of a shock and is now simply waiting to feel things in their proper order. A detective named Sylvia Okonkwo took Wren's statement with patience and without condescension, crouching down to Wren's level and asking questions. The way you ask questions, when you actually want answers, and not just confirmation of what you already think. Wren answered everything clearly and without embellishment. When she didn't know something, she said she didn't know. When she was sure of something, she said so without hedging. At one point, Detective Okonkwo looked up at Joseph and said, "She's remarkably observant." Joseph didn't smile. He was too worried for that. But something shifted in his expression. The private pride of someone who has watched a person become themselves. "She always has been," he said. The device was real. Elliot didn't need anyone to tell him, but Carol told him anyway outside the police line, her voice low enough that no one else could hear. The disposal team had found it attached to the undercarriage, not a sophisticated construction, but functional. Functional enough. "They're asking you to come in," Carol said. "I know, Elliot." She paused. The description the girl gave. The tattoo. "I know," he said again. He had hired Dennis Hartwell 12 years ago as his director of logistics. Dennis had come with strong references and a background in supply chain management and a calm, methodical personality that Elliot had always found reassuring. He had given Dennis 2 raises, invited him to the company Christmas party for 12 years, trusted him with inventory systems that touched every client account the company had. Dennis had attended the funeral when Elliot's wife died. He had sent a card. Elliot remembered thinking the card was thoughtful, the anchor tattoo, right hand. Dennis had gotten it in the Navy, before logistics, before Bancroft Medical, before 12 years of being the kind of employee you stopped noticing because everything always ran smoothly. The investigation would take weeks. Elliot understood that. He understood that the story of why, the motive, the resentment, whatever had grown in silence over 12 years until it became something that ended up attached to the undercarriage of a car, was a story he would have to sit with and not rush. But that was later. That was the part he would carry slowly. Right now he walked back to the bench where Joseph and Wren were sitting. Joseph had bought Wren a bottle of water from the cart, and she was holding it with both hands, watching the police vehicles the way children watch complicated things, with total absorption and no performance of emotion. Elliot sat down beside her. Ren, he said. She looked at him. You saved my life today. I want you to understand that. Not in a small way. Not in an almost kind of way. He stopped. He was not a man who cried easily. Hadn't been since his 40s. But there was something pressing at the back of his throat that he was managing carefully. You saw something that most adults would have walked past, and then you did something about it. That's not a small thing. That's not even a brave thing in the ordinary sense. That's just being a person who pays attention and acts on it. That's harder than it sounds. Ren looked at the water bottle in her hands, then at him. The parking man didn't listen, she said. No, he didn't, and that's on him, and it's something he's going to have to think about for a long time. Elliot paused. But you didn't stop at the parking man. You got back in the elevator and you told me. That part matters. You didn't decide that because one person didn't listen. The thing wasn't worth saying. She was quiet for a moment. Grandpa always says to say the true thing even if it doesn't work the first time, she said. Elliot looked at Joseph. Joseph was looking somewhere else at the police line, but his jaw was tight and his eyes were bright. Your grandpa is right, Elliot said. In the weeks that followed, the investigation confirmed what the tattoo had already told Elliot. Dennis Hartwell had been quietly diverting inventory. Small quantities at first, over the course of years, sold to a network of secondary buyers at prices that didn't appear on any official ledger. He had been careful. He had been, in many ways, patient in the same calm, methodical way he had always been. When the internal audit that Elliot had initiated 2 months ago had started getting close, Dennis had grown less patient. The device under the car was meant to look like a mechanical failure. It might have, if not for a 7-year-old girl with undone braids who had been standing behind a pillar waiting for her grandfather. Elliot thought about that a great deal. The smallness of the margin. The fact that he had parked near the pillar. That particular habit, for that particular reason, which put the car in Ren's line of sight when she stepped off the elevator. The fact that Joseph had stopped to talk to someone at the front desk. The fact that Ren had the kind of attention that noticed what it noticed and then did something with what it noticed. He thought about the parking attendant who hadn't listened. He instituted new training protocols for building security at every Bancroft-associated facility with a specific section on taking reports from minors seriously. Carol thought it was excessive. He left it in. He called Joseph in early December. I'd like to invite you and Ren to dinner, he said. Not a formal thing, just dinner. I have a daughter about your age, or not your age, but... He stopped. He was better in rooms than on the phone. I have a daughter who is 31 and who is also the kind of person who says the true thing. I think she'd like to meet Ren. There was a pause on Joseph's end. Ren has been asking about you, Joseph said. She wants to know if you're okay. She asks me every few days. I keep telling her you're fine, but she'd rather hear it from you. Elliot was quiet for a moment. Then tell her I'll tell her myself at dinner, he said. They came on a Thursday in December, Joseph in a cardigan, and Ren in a dress she had clearly chosen herself. Green with small white flowers, with the same kind of slightly too big quality as the yellow cardigan, as though she consistently selected things with room to grow into. She shook Elliot's hand at the door the way someone had clearly taught her to shake hands, firmly and with eye contact, and then immediately asked if he had a dog. He did not have a dog. He had 2 cats, which he had not expected to have and which had appeared in his life after his wife died through a sequence of events he still wasn't entirely sure he had consented to. He told Ren this. She found it very funny. His daughter, Nina Bancroft, was already there. She was 31 and worked in public health and had her mother's way of paying attention to people, which meant she had Ren's full confidence within approximately 4 minutes. They ate. Joseph talked about teaching, about the students he still heard from, the ones who had gone on to do things he hadn't expected, the ones who hadn't gone on to do things and how that stayed with you differently. Elliot talked about the company, about what the last few months had taught him about the people he thought he knew. Nina talked about a project she was working on in under-resourced school districts on the west side. Ren ate her food and listened to the adults with that same total absorption and occasionally said something that was so precisely correct that everyone at the table went briefly quiet. After dinner, while Joseph and Nina were washing dishes, Joseph had insisted and Nina had followed because she was that kind of person. Elliot the cat sat with Ren in the living room and was sitting approximately 8 inches from Ren, performing the elaborate indifference of a cat who very much wants to be noticed but refuses to make the first move. His name is George, Elliot said. He'll pretend he doesn't want you to pet him, but he does. Ren held out her hand, palm down. George studied it for a moment and then stepped forward and pressed his head into it. I knew it, Ren said. Elliot smiled. Ren, he said, I want to tell you something, and I want you to actually hear it, not just nod. She looked at him. I've spent 22 years building something. A company. A reputation. I've made decisions I'm proud of and some I'm not. I've trusted people I shouldn't have and not trusted people I should have. He paused. But no amount of building something means you get to skip being saved by someone else. That's not how it works. And the person who saves you doesn't have to be who you expected. They just have to be paying attention. Wren was quiet, petting George, who had fully abandoned his pretense. Are you going to be okay? She asked. Yes, he said, and meant it. Are you? She considered this with the seriousness she gave all questions. Grandpa says it's good to be someone who notices things, she said. Even when it's scary to say something about what you noticed, he says that's how you be useful in the world. He's right, Elliot said. He's completely right. George climbed into Wren's lap with the confidence of an animal who has decided a decision has been made. She looked down at him, then back up at Elliot. I'm glad you didn't get in your car, she said. He had not cried when the detective told him what had been found under the car. He had not cried when Carol walked him through the timeline of Dennis's betrayal. He had not cried in December, in the quiet of his house, after his wife had been gone for 3 years, at the particular loneliness of being a man who had built a great deal and was still learning what it was for. Me too, he said.